Yeah. AC/DC, for those about the rock. Oh,
What a tune.
Nothing gets the dads more excited. Like,
No, absolutely not. No, I think, AC/DC, man, they remain one of my favorite bands from my childhood. I think they, a lot of like writing riffs is obviously with Parkas is like something that there's a real art to finding that real, the chords that just hit and, that the riff that hits. And I think AC/DC never tried to like be too complicated with it, and never once like sort of like instantly on the radio when an AC/DC song's on, you just know, because it's instantly identifiable, and Angus Young's guitar playing is like that identifiable. And I think that's something that I've never tried to overcomplicate things when I'm writing stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think if it feels good and it feels rocky and it feels like, yeah, man, then it's like attitude. Exactly. That's it. All about the attitude.
I just pictured Jack Black's face in School of Rock, just when he's explaining what rock is. It's just like, all about the attitude.
It's about the passion, man. Where's the joy?
You let the lead out.
Yeah, it's true. I can't make. Jack Black was bloody that film. As a kid, I was like, yes, absolutely, Jack.
Yes.
Where's the passion? Where's the joy? That's it.
I think that movie set up a lot of people for playing guitar
honestly,
and
I think
instruments.
That film, I think that film's influence is massively underrated. I think to our generation of musicians, I think, if you're a rock musician and don't see School of Rock as like a pivotal moment in your life, then something's wrong.
I remember just like with that ending song, fucking AC/DC. It's when that chord rings out. I was like,
and he talks the kids through like okay, now here's a little thing. It's called power stance. You own the universe. Now give me an E chord. Let me hear it.
Loosey goosey, baby. Loosey goosey.
It's like Jack Black was not just talking to that kid; he was talking to every young person that owns a guitar, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? It was universally applicable. I think. Man,
changed lives.
Did 100%. But I think classic rock for me. That's I'll never not enjoy a good AC/DC tune or a good Led Zeppelin tune or a good Who tune or the Kinks or whatever it might be. Man, love all of that.
So when did the kind of transition to kind of broadening your palette happen? Was it like secondary school, like a lot of people, or what was the?
No, you know what? I think, to be totally honest, I would say when I started writing songs was when I started listening to music other than what my dad played me. I think I had roughly kind of my own music taste at that point. I suppose I listened to like Eminem and, a few other people, but, that was when I started writing my own tunes. That was like the turning point. And I reckon that was around about 14, 15 years old. And then from there, I think, things just, you naturally when you write songs, I think you naturally want to take in more influence because you want your own songwriting to be more, what's the word?
Colorful.
More like, colorful. Exactly. That's excellent word. I think, that's, you just want to naturally do that. So I think at that point I moved away from maybe trying to write those kind of hard rock songs, that, like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, etc. And then started moving more towards, okay, so let's look at like British indie music and like the Arctic Monkeys and what are they saying and what are the Stone Roses saying, and the Oasis, the Smiths, and all these other bands that I really loved when I was younger. And then it just sort of went from there. I think, to be totally honest, like the one thing that's kind of stayed present throughout all of it is like the guitar as an instrument. I think that for me runs right through from when I first started listening to music to like even now. I just like guitar music just gets me going, and I'll never stop, you know, enjoying like a good rock band. You could just give me a flipping like rock covers band that play some like classic indie tunes, some like classic rock tunes. I'm like, cool, nice. I just like the fact that guitar sounds distorted. It's great. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, yeah, I'm pretty simple in that
Isn't
respect.
it kind of class that the term guitar music has become its thing in society? And it's a strange one.
It is strange because you can have people that say guitar music probably would naturally think of rock, but then you know you got jazz, you got like people like Tom Misch.
Yeah,
is guitar music, let's say, because it's got a guitar in it. Do you know what I mean? Like flipping, I'm sure there's like, you know, neo soul that you could call guitar music because the guy that does it plays a guitar. So yeah, it's kind of ridiculous in a sense, but
you listen to some R&B tracks and some of the guitar lines and those songs are beautiful.
Absolutely. You know? Yeah. I mean, like Leon Bridges is a really good example of that. Like, I'm sure you know about him. He's like a soul singer, but you know, in his most recent album, has gone into that kind of R&B, but like that real authentic, like 90s, maybe even like pre-90s R&B sound. And his instrument is guitar. That's his main instrument.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I think as an instrument, I think it's such a physical thing to play a guitar. Do you know what I mean? It's just you this right arm just pumps, and this is where the intricacies, and this is where the, you know, technique shines through on your left hand, but then your right hand is just power and like emphasis and punctuation. Do you know what I mean? Like as an instrument to play a piano, you sit down, you play, you know, you treat it, not treat it with care, but like, you know, you sort of, there's an elegance to playing the piano. There's an elegance to playing like the violin. There's like, well, like, you know, a bass, you would imagine you've got to be smooth and sort of like, you know, kind of, yeah, like, I don't know, like that's how I see it in my head. But a guitar, you can be as elegant or as just powerful as you want to be with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I love that. I love it so much because it's just, and when you're on stage as well, you can perform with a guitar. You can like, you know, like Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of that. It's like it becomes part of the show, what you can do with it, what you can, you know, the mad tricks you can like, you know, playing on the back of your head and like, the dive bombs and all that. Like Chuck Berry, another good example. I mean, using the guitar as like a prop almost on stage. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's why I love it, man, because it's as much a part of the show as the person playing it.
It's very performative. It's such a versatile instrument. Like it's why it's kind of it's almost like the postcard of like the traveling musician in it. It's just, you got a guitar and a case and you just go and you do your thing.
That's definitely. Yeah, man, it's just, it can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be, but it's down to the person playing it to make that kind of, you know, journey on them by themselves. But yeah.
You mentioned the Stone Roses.
I did.
Speaking of under the umbrella of guitar music, Stone Roses are a band that have a following that confuses me. I can never tell if people like the Stone Roses or not. They're one of those bands that if someone gives me a playlist, I would 100% feel that the Stone Roses don't fit into it at all. But then someone else would be like, that's definitely a place where the Stone Roses should fit.
For me, I would say they are honestly one of my favorite bands of all time, if not my favorite band of all time. And just to be completely clear, for me, they stand alone within the vast array of bands that have come through this kind of British rock, classic British rock scene that so many people from all around the world see the UK as these bands, like, you know, the Beatles, the Kinks, you know, like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. Do you know what I mean? Like, people from all over the world see this country as like the producer of all these amazing bands. For me, the Stone Roses stand separate from all of them because they were, in my opinion, they were just the most, they really honestly and truly didn't see any other bands around them as equal to them or in any way, you know, comparatively, like, you know, writing as good songs as they were. They just didn't, as clear as, like, you know, or as true as the breath in their lungs, they didn't think that any bands around them were as good as them. And this was before they even had any success. Yeah. It was 8 years. They formed in 1982, 83, something. It was 8 years before they reached their peak, like 1990, playing Spike Island. And like, yeah, man, like they, like Ian Brown, especially as a frontman, just, you know, he just had self-belief, and that wasn't a thing for bands up until that point, from Britain especially, to have that self-confidence and to just be like, no, I know, I don't care what you say. I know, me personally, I know my music speaks to, like, you know, thousands of people, and you're just not, you haven't caught up yet, and that's your problem. You know, I can't help you, this poor little person. Do you know what I mean? But like, I think that's but that's why I think they stand on their own in that entire, you know, in that vast array of bands that have come out of the UK and been successful, because they really just didn't care, and they were just these, you know, their entire attitude is, I've never seen anything like it before in music, like indie music that I was listening to at the time. And for me, what their attitude combined with the amazing, beautiful songs that are on that first album that I just still give me goosebumps to this day. That's what makes them so unique, and that's what makes them so special to me as a band. And I think that in terms of not really knowing where to place them, in terms of, because I wouldn't, you can't lump them in with the Smiths and that kind of, you know, mid-80s sort of scene. You can't lump them in with, you know, 90s rock like Oasis and Blur and stuff like that. But, you know, even in that Manchester scene, which you would say they had most in common with, like bands like the Happy Mondays and the Charlatans and things like that, they were the most original out of those bands, and they were the biggest out of those bands, and they were the best out of those bands. So even in that weird little Manchester scene that was just filled with bands from one city that kind of made this sort of ravey sounding guitar rock that appealed to both like ravers and, you know, indie fans as well. Even within that, they stood out on their own. So yeah, man, I think it's interesting you say that, because me personally as well, I treat them with such reverence. If I'm going to listen to them, it's like when I am ridiculously happy, and like I need music that will reflect that happy state that I'm in, and I just put on that first album, and it increases the joy exponentially. And yeah, man, I've seen them twice. I saw them at the Etihad in Manchester, and then at Wembley in London, and I don't think they're going to play another live gig again, but I'm incredibly happy to say that I've seen them live and experienced those songs with like thousands of people around me, and just it's as I get emotional just talking about them. You know what I mean? Like, they're one of my favorite bands ever. And
the first song I heard from them was "She Bangs the Drum," which is on that album as well.
Yes, yeah.
And I kind of knew that they were a bit different just from hearing that, because the sound palette that they used was, they had elements of the kind of jangliness of the, like, indie bands then, but as I said, like, Ian Brown's voice was different to everything I was hearing, and it was like unafraid to be happy and unafraid to be to not, again, as you say, just not caring. Like, I don't care.
It's true. But this is why I think it's so interesting that they were so popular around the time of like acid house and like 90s raves becoming a thing. Because taking, like, you know, you tie it in with like drugs and stuff, like, or drug culture. Ecstasy at that point was becoming like the drug that everyone in the UK did, and then you went out to a field and just raved for hours and hours and hours and hours, and didn't go home till like 3 days later. They tapped into that kind of feeling that was going through the country at that point, and consciously or unconsciously wrote songs that have this real psychedelic feel to them, and it almost throws back to like the 60s and like that kind of hippie era of back then, but with indie sort of guitar parts, and they dressed like indie people, or they dressed really baggy, and like just how they would dress, like as if they were walking down the street in Manchester, and yeah, it's they encompass so much of what I love about British culture, not even just music, but British culture, and they are like, yeah, just unique in that way. And I think Ian Brown's voice, especially on that first album, he sounds as if he sounds like Liam Gallagher has a very probably a slightly more distinctive voice.
Yeah,
he only got that from hearing Ian Brown sing in like his Mancunian voice, but he sounded like an angel. Do you know what I'm saying? It was so like just clean, but he still had that twang. And then Liam Gallagher just applies that to like a rockier sound, and then obviously makes it a lot more distinctive. But yeah, man, we haven't even got into like the rhythm section or like any of that. But we could do this whole podcast on the Stone Roses, and I would literally talk for hours about it. But we don't have enough time, so
let's listen to some Stone Roses.
Yes, please.
If you've got a feeling that you can't put into words, don't worry, friends. 'Cause there's a song for that.